Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Sally Pinto and I'm from the Yonkers Newark Neighborhood Naturally Occurring Retirement Community. We launched back in January of 2020 and we're here to serve seniors 60 plus in Northeast Yonkers. We have lots of fun programs and activities, and we also have a lot of resources for you as well. Our programs include meditation chair yoga, body mind fitness, bingo, and any other programs that you might be interested, like arts and gardening. We have our resource specialist, Alexa Smith, who can help you with finding services and activities out there for you, as well as our nurse, Barbara Simone, who can help answer your health-related questions. We're here for you, we're here for our community, and we look forward to seeing you in our programs. Enjoy.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alexa Smith, the resource specialist with the Yonkers Newark. I'm here to help with application assistance, referrals for home delivered meals, and transportation services will be coming soon. We also offer Zoom activities and Zoom programs. And if you have any other questions or concerns, I'm here to help. Thank you so much and enjoy the program.
Welcome. I'm Barbara Simone, registered nurse. I recently retired from Westchester County's Health Department as a public health nurse. I am now here to try to assist you with any medical or preventive care issues. Enjoy this program, and I'm looking forward to working with you.
You know, I always have to say it. All right, so lights, camera, action.
Well, good evening. Welcome to the program, an interview with Mark Bennett. I am Phil Pajali, a librarian with the Yonkers Public Library, and I'm very excited to be interviewing the multi-talented Mark Bennett for this evening's program. And I'd like to mention that one of our collaborators on many of our programs who are supporting this program tonight, and I'll mention Mark's involvement with them in a minute. Yonkers Newark, which stands for Neighborhood Naturally Occurring Retirement Community, which is set up to create activities to help seniors make friends, develop new interests, further their areas of expertise, and grow as individuals. So we have several programs that are offered as a partnership of Yonkers Library and also and Newark. And Mark has been very involved with them. Mark interns with Newark, and he has a regular program called Art with Mark, which is wonderful, and I highly recommend that you check it out. Just to begin, I'm going to read to you a short bio of Mark, if you're not familiar with him already. So this is from his latest book, Create Your Own Path, It All Begins in the Mind, children's book. Yeah, Mark is holding up the newest edition of the book, and we'll talk a little bit about the different editions later on. Mark writes, by the way, is M.W. Bennett, if you're looking for the books online. And about the author reads, Brooklyn-born child of the 1980s, M.W. Bennett was raised with the old Trinidadian mindset that nothing is impossible and hard work equals positive results. He is a published author, cartoonist, painter, spoken word performer, storyboard artist, scriptwriter, MC, model, senior non-commissioned officer in the United States Army, and a proud father. M.W. Bennett's first novel, entitled Sunjata, Book 1, The Blood Wars, debuted in 2008. There it is. It was followed in 2014 by Book 2, Weapons. Okay, and the third book, again, is called Create Your Own Path. It All Begins in the Mind, which is Mark's latest book, published in 2017 originally, and also his first book for children. Okay, and one that also brings in his spectacular artwork. Okay, so that's a little overview what Mark has done. So I'm going to begin the interview now. First of all, Mark, well, welcome. And I'd like to ask you, to begin, I'd like to ask you, what led you to creative writing and developing novels? Did your interest in the visual arts play a role?
Absolutely. First of all, let me say, Phil, thank you for having me. I appreciate all your kind words and just the fact that you're having me. I'm very honored to be here. So thank you for that. And for Z for having me here. So to answer your question, yes. So I owe my literacy to comic books. You know, growing up reading comics, Justice League. When I was a kid, I was given a Justice League comic by my father's cousin. It's my great cousin. I don't know what that is to me, my second cousin. And he gave me a Justice League comic book, and I remember the episode or the issue was Red Tornado, and the cover. He's on the cover and he's shooting his tornadoes out of his hands, and all the Justice League was going all over the place. And I was familiar with the characters, but I had never seen them together before this. I mean, it was the Super Friends cartoon, but as a comic, it just blew me away. So that was the beginning of my love for storytelling, love for art, love for I loved art before that, but that really made me feel that I can do it. I wanted to write, I wanted to draw, I wanted to tell stories in that way, in that manner. Being a comic book artist was my first love. But then as I got older, I also wanted to expand my stories and my storytelling into creating novels, so I can get more in depth with it. But I have a love for animation, a love for comic books, and a love for novels. And I started reading comics, and then I began reading more things as I got older, reading novels and short stories and so on, some poetry and everything like that.
So you were an artist first and then a writer later.
I guess the reason why I'm hesitant to say yes to that, because I think it was kind of simultaneous, because I always wanted to tell stories. When I was a kid, I guess I can say this, it's not embarrassing. I was a kid. So when I was a kid, I used to, playing with Star Wars figures, right? My old Star Wars figures. In my mind, I was telling stories. So at that time, I couldn't draw yet, and I wasn't writing, right? I wasn't doing creative writing, but I was still telling stories. So telling stories was my first love, really. So it kind of goes hand in hand. I was drawing and telling stories by just the visuals, and I was also creating the concepts and the characters and how they were interacting and what they were going through. So they kind of were simultaneous.
Yeah, I can see. There's a sense of, well, for lack of a better term, world building in those Sunjata books. And, to the attendees, when you look at these books, you'll be amazed at the level of detail that Mark put into creating the landscape for these stories to be told. I mean, he even includes a glossary that will basically give you information about the fictional countries, the secret societies, military units, weapons, even races of people that he has developed for these stories. So it's almost like Tolkien-esque, what you've done in these books.
Yeah, those were also my inspirations. The whole Lord of the Rings series, Star Wars series. I was blown away when myself and all my friends, and Philip, you may be from my generation, so you probably know what I'm talking about. There was a moment where we learned that, Star Wars saga came out in the 70s, right? Mm-hmm. We had New Hope, and then Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. And somewhere between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, there was a rumor going around that George Lucas had created, because New Hope was episode 4, 5, and 6, right? Mm-hmm. So that was a thing, right? So we were like, "Where's 1, 2, and 3? Like, what is that?" We didn't know what was going on. And then there was a rumor that he had written a story, and it was somewhere it existed. The idea of it existed, like the backstory of Darth Vader, and then hearing Obi-Wan Kenobi mentioning in passing that, you know, him and Darth Vader used to be, you know, Anakin Skywalker used to be friends and they fought and all this stuff. And then there was a rumor that there's a scene somewhere written that they had a fight on a volcano and that's how he became Darth Vader. And that took our imagination with us as kids into our adulthood until we finally saw it decades later in the prequels. And that idea that there's backstory, that there's a whole thing that we don't see but exists is what inspired me. And same thing with Tolkien and Lord of the Rings and even later with Harry Potter, and you know, that whole world building thing is what I love, world building.
Yeah, no, I was wondering if you think of these books in terms of a specific genre, because I don't think I could slot them into a genre. I mean, they incorporate action, adventure, fantasy. You know, there's so many elements. There's the mystical aspect. There's the martial arts aspect to it.
Yeah, I don't like the idea that, I mean, it's okay if you're an author and you're going for a particular genre. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't like the idea that it has to be that way. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I enjoy all of those genres you just mentioned. So I'm like, well, why can't I just, maybe I failed at, maybe it's too much, you know, but for me, I'm like, why can't I incorporate all these genres into one story? It's all the things I love.
Yeah, yeah. It's well. I was wanted to ask you about writing action scenes. First of all, I mean, is this? Do you think the requirement of writing very descriptive action scenes is a particular challenge for the author? Do you find yourself getting bogged down with the technical details?
You know, it's funny you even bring that up because I've had mixed reviews on that. There are some people who, so I'm a visual artist first. Not first, but I'm a visual artist, right? So yes, to answer your question, the answer is yes. That's the short answer. It's very challenging. And I had to, if you read the second book, Weapons, there's a lot of less description of the fight scenes in there because I got mixed reviews. Some people love the fact that I described in very in-depth detail of what's happening, and some people's like it's too much. It's like you should leave a little bit to the imagination of the reader, you know, because I would describe in the first book every move because I see it in my head. I see it. I grew up on watching kung fu movies, so I want the audience to see what I see in my head when Sanjata is fighting 5 people and he takes down all 5 people. I want you to know exactly how he did it. So maybe it was too much. I don't know. So I had mixed reviews on that, so I had to kind of cut it down on the second book. So
Do you have training in martial arts, or?
I've trained in martial arts. Yes, I've studied Kupagana and Gumi, which is a African style martial arts at one point. I've studied capoeira at one point. I've studied I forgot the name of it. It's been a while. It's been a long time. But yeah, I've studied martial arts. I have martial arts in my background. Yes.
Yeah, and that would give you an advantage as opposed to, you know, many writers who do this kind of thing who have probably not even been in a fight before,
Yeah.
that have no understanding about the combat. So that gives you a leg up when you're writing that kind of thing.
And also I've in the military I've studied we do combatives, and there's a lot of which is, you know, similar to what you see in MMA, that type of fighting. So I've studied that as well. So yes, and it does give me an advantage to what the body can and can't do, you know. So
Yeah.
you know, so how you can, I don't want to get too graphic, but how you can break someone's wrist, you know. I put that in, all that's in the story. So yeah.
And speaking of the military, you were writing these books when you were in the military, right?
Yes, that's correct. I was writing Sanjata, the first book, The Blood Wars, while I was deployed to Iraq. And I was in Iraq writing, you know, I was a 25 Bravo, which is an information technology specialist. This kind of stuff you see behind me. And we would do shifts, and they were 12-hour shifts. And once we have everything set up, there was really nothing to do but to make sure that everything stayed working. So when it was working, I was just like in the back of the TOC. The TOC means Tactical Operations Center, where all the activities went on, where the higher ups can keep, you know, tabs and communication with those that's in the field. So I was in the TOC and it's in the back, writing Sanjata and actually taking ideas from what was happening in front of me. and putting it in the story.
Yeah, wow. How would you describe your writing process? Do you work from a synopsis? Do you outline chapter by chapter?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I do. I would first of all I would first write out the synopsis, the concept. Like this is what happens. I write it, like just only I will see this. So it's just like, okay, this happens and then that happens and that happens and that happens. Just write out what happens from beginning to the end of the story, and then I'll take that story and break down what in a outline format as chapters. So it's parts. I have like 4 parts, and within the 4 parts, there's 5 to 10 chapters in each part. So there's 4 parts and 10 chapters each in each part, and I break it down like that. And now I'm trying to get better. I'm reading. I've discovered this book called Wired for Story. It's written by, this is a plug for Lisa Cron. It's called Wired for Story. It's a really good book on how to tell stories and how to grab the audience's attention from the very beginning. And so she really is good on, it says the writer's guide to using brain science to hook readers from the very first sentence. And then this other book is called Story Engineering, the Mastering the 6 Core Competencies of Successful Writing by Larry Brooks. So if you're thinking about writing, these 2 books are really good. Plug for those people.
Yeah, I'll check those out. I mean, I do a little creative writing myself, so I'll take a look at those. Do you find that even after you've created or you've outlined your book, when writing the Sunjata books, did you find yourself maybe going in a direction that you didn't expect, even working from the outline?
Wow, that's a good question. So it goes into a realm that some people think is not real, and this is like kind of mumbo jumbo, spiritual, whatever. But there is a point that when you tap into your story, when you get tapped in, it's the story is writing itself, and you feel like a vessel, and you feel like I actually feel, this may sound weird, but I actually feel that these characters exist in another reality, and I just tapped into some type of portal, and I'm actually telling their story. Because there was a point where I was writing, and I'm like writing it with my eyes, like, wow, really? Like I'm learning. I really do feel like I was a vessel to something that existed. That's not to say, oh, I'm the best writer. It had nothing to do with my writing skills. It's talking purely about being able to just get that story out. And so, yes, to answer your question, I'm glad you asked the question. That is an experience that, as writers, if you ever experience that, it's the best experience ever.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced that myself. I mean, I haven't done a lot of creative writing, but I remembered writing a script some years back, and I just found myself just getting lost, and it was like I wasn't even in the room anymore.
Yes.
So I was in the world of what I was writing. So it can be really powerful.
What's your script about, if you don't mind me asking? I know this is about me, but I'm interested to know what were you writing about?
Well, I was actually writing a screenplay adaptation of a play called The Lady from the Sea by Henrik Ibsen. I thought it would make a good film. I was writing it with my sister, and we did finish it, but we're gonna have to go back and work on it some more, and I don't know when that's gonna happen. It's probably gonna sit there, but
No.
I would eventually like to do something with it. But I will say that the process or in the whole experience of writing it was so much fun that made the whole thing worthwhile. I wouldn't say it was a waste.
Yeah, no, you got to do something with that. That's I encourage you to go back and open. And you know what's the fun thing about having something you've written and then you put down, you pick it back up, you read it, and sometimes it feels like you're reading it for the first time.
Yes.
Like someone else wrote it. You're like, wow, there's things you forgot. You don't even remember writing it. So I challenge you to pick that back up and read it again. And
all right. Maybe I will.
I would love to read it too.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, well, first of all, I'll try to find it. I'm not even sure where it is, but I'll look for it.
Awesome.
Could you talk about how you got the first Sunjata book published, The
Sure.
Blood Wars?
Yeah, so I in the 90s, I was trying to get published way back then. I wasn't ready back then, but I was, submitting work with a lot of publishing houses, and at that time, this is before the internet, and you mail it in and you get rejection letters and everything. So, but then when the turn of the century started to come around, we started to get um, a lot of companies, self-publishing companies came out, and the internet came out, and that's when everything changed. We had control. So I was just doing research and public. So the Sanjata, the first book is Author House was the self-publishing company that I used, and they pretty much all the publishing companies, self-publishing companies, have the same concept, which is they have different packages that you can choose. They edit the book for you. They market it. They publish it. They could do covers, but I did my own covers. But they could provide you with covers if you don't have an artist to do that for you. They print it. They distribute it, put it on the internet, all that. And you can pick which package you want, and there's different prices. And so I just took advantage of this new trend. So
Okay, yeah.
you have your own editor, you can save money. So
Yeah.
I did.
So the Blood Wars was intended as, well, it was the first in a trilogy. When you went to write the second book, Weapons, was it difficult building on that work on the first book for the second one?
No, because referring back to the Star Wars reference I said earlier, I wrote what we call the Bible, and I got that the Bible. I mean, we know what a Bible is, right? But I used to intern, and then I became an editor's assistant for Milestone Media. If you haven't heard of Milestone Media, if you heard of Static Shock, then you've heard of Milestone Media. It was a black-owned comic company in the 90s that got really popular. They had a bunch of characters like Icon, Hardware, Static. It was called Static back then, and they added Static Shock later when it became an animated series. Another story. Blood Syndicate, and all these different characters. Well, there was this thing that the creators of Milestone had, and they called it the Bible, where it was pretty much a backstory, like it was the story that wasn't going to be published. It was just the backstory for the creators to understand what is happening in the story as they're writing their stuff. So I, borrowed that idea and I wrote a Bible for my story. So so there's there's things that never showed up in the books, but they're backstories of the story. So it was easy for me to I already know what's going to happen in the whole trilogy before this book and after this book. Like, when Sanjata was a baby to when he dies. So, spoiler alert, he dies at some point. But anyway, so it was easy to build on it because I just go to the Bible and say, okay, just continue the story.
I say, yeah. I mean, if to the attendees, if you haven't heard this term before, it's also used for like television shows. If you have a team of writers, in order to kind of basically create an organized kind of overarching story for a TV series, the creators will usually do a Bible. So it will be a description of characters and the setting, and it could go on for a few hundred pages. Some of these things, and I was interviewing. It can be done for a series of movies also. So I interviewed an executive with MGM UA who had worked on the James Bond series, and he was telling me about the James Bond Bible and how all of the writers who came in had to read this massive tome. Right.
Because the purpose of that is to maintain continuity too, especially with James Bond. You have different writers, different directors, different actors, right? And there's rules that you can and can't do. Like James Bond will never do this. You can't have new actor come in, new director come in, new writer comes in. You can make him do whatever he does, but he's not going to come into a bar and ask for another drink. You know, we all know what he drinks, right? So that's in the Bible, I'm sure, right?
Right.
You got to come and ask for a Coke. You know, it's like that's not what.
It's not gonna happen. Yeah.
Exactly.
The writer's gonna be fired if that happens.
Exactly.
Probably.
You know, yeah, it's like you know what he drinks. You know.
Right. Did you now you talked about how you changed how you wrote the action scenes based on feedback that you had gotten. I'm wondering if there was anything else that you changed based on the reaction that you got from readers for the second book?
Well, yes, I'm still learning to be a better writer, right? And so, yeah, I have some beta readers. You know what a beta reader is? Like it's
I'm not sure.
yeah. So basically, it's like, let's say I'm writing my book. It's not published yet. I give you a copy of it and say, can you read this for me? And you have like a team of people that you trust. Like my wife is one of them, and I have a really good friend. His name is Micah. He's another beta reader. I have you, and then you read
Okay.
it, and you come back and say, hey, try this, try that. So, so I can, you know, I have a lot to learn. Let's put it that way. So I've gotten some feedback in which is like, there's some things you can do to be a better writer. So I'm always learning, and I encourage that. You know, so yeah, it's just my writing style can use some touch ups, but I like my style, but it could always use improvement.
What do you think are the most important qualities that a writer should have?
Oh, that's another good question. Well, you got some good questions there. I think number one is originality, right? I mean, you always hear the expression, there's nothing new under the sun. You always hear that, which is true. However, there is a sense of taking, there's stealing and then there's borrowing, right? So I think that we're all inspired by something, right? Like I said, I was inspired by Star Wars and Tolkien, but you read Sanjata, there's no Star Wars. It's just the foundation is there as an inspiration. So so creativity, originality is the two things that I would say that a writer should have first.
I noticed in I think it's in the about the author on the first Sanjata book that you wrote that through the years of growing up and watching movies, reading books, reading comic books, through those years, I searched for a hero that I could look to that looked like and represented me. I was wondering if you could talk a little about that.
Sure. And I'll even, Wale wrote, Mark, elaborate on when you said that this, when I said this, a person with a goatee and dreadlocks is usually negative, right? So that was in the interview. So Wale, thank you for that. So that, I read that because it goes into the question you just asked.
Okay.
Yes. So, so there's now, since I wrote that, and since I've said that, times have changed, right? So the MCU was created in between the time I said that and now. So the MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe, for those of you who know, has made great strides in this topic, which I commend them for. But growing up, right, growing up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, when I was into this stuff, we did not get a lot of African American heroes. And when we did, they were very one-dimensional, right? They didn't have deep stories. The one that did was Black Panther. He had a deep story, which was really good. And there was a few others. I'm sure we could, find a few others. But for the most part, I was not seeing myself. For some reason, the comic book and cartoon and animation world was not marketing their stuff to us, Black African American kids who love the stuff too. For some reason, there was a rumor going around that like Black people are not into fiction and fantasy and sci-fi. I keep hearing this. It's like couldn't be furthest from the truth, right? So I didn't see it. We got Lando Calrissian. We have these onesies and twosies here and there. They're side characters. They're sidekicks. They're comedic relief, comedy relief. And to answer, and Wale, when you said, also there was a time when facial hair was considered a bad thing. Now it's popular now, right? But you know, if you remember the old Star Trek episode where they went to alternate reality and they saw the the villain version of themselves, and Spock had a goatee. It was like it's always,
That's
that was
right.
supposed to symbolize he was a villain. You know, right?
Yeah,
The bad Spock didn't shave.
it's the old mustache
Yeah, yeah,
twirling thing, I
yeah,
guess.
exactly. Yeah, you know, Dick Dastardly, if you remember that character, from the old Hanna-Barbera cartoon. So it was like, you know, that was a thing. And then dreadlocks, right? You know, even the word dreadlocks is a whole nother conversations, but locks was considered you know, wasn't considered a positive thing. It was always the villains. You always see the characters, the black characters who were villains or thugs or whatever. They had dreads. And at the time I wrote some chapter, I had locks, right? So I wanted to show that's not a negative thing. It's not a bad thing. Facial hair and locks and African American characters can be heroes and villains, right? That's another thing. I think a lot of Hollywood was afraid to offend black people by creating a really great black villain because they thought that we would be offended. We would be offended if he was a stereotypical negative black villain, right? But you know, if he came out like, "Hey man, I'm a," you know, that wouldn't be offensive. But a Doctor Doom level villain that happens to be black, we would love to see that, and we got it with Killmonger, right? So for those who know from the Black Panther movie, you know, with Michael B. Jordan, right? So we want to see ourselves, you know, positive as well, or in these roles and these places as well. So instead of complaining about it, I created it.
Yeah, and actually, you mentioned Killmonger. I would say that's one of the more developed villains in the Marvel universe. I mean, he has you know, he's even sympathetic to a certain degree in terms of his situation and why he's so angry. You know,
Yeah,
is very understandable.
yeah, and
Yeah.
T'Challa, the main hero, ended up agreeing with him in the end.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, his girlfriend, uh, Nakia, played by Lupita Nyong'o, she agreed with him too. She didn't come out and say it, but the things that she was telling T'Challa that he should do was the same thing that Killmonger was saying, just in a different kind of way. He just went about it differently. She was saying the same thing. We need to share our technology and our culture with the world. Same thing that Killmonger was saying. And he ended up going into the spirit world and talking to his father and say, "You were wrong. You were wrong for doing what you did to Killmonger as a kid." So that was, to me, great writing,
Mm-hmm.
a great villain.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking the only African American hero I can think of that was in the movies with the hairstyle. I mean, I'll use the term dreadlocks, but that I can think of is Ice-T in Surviving the Game. If you've ever seen that film,
Yeah, that movie was based off of the Most Dangerous Game.
Dangerous Game. That's right. And so that was, again, as you said, very unusual in Hollywood that you wouldn't normally see that. So, but that film had an African American director, Ernest Dickerson, who was a director of photography on Spike Lee's movies. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there you go. So it's all about representation, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera. So when we're in the room, we can make things happen and make things you know, work. You know, and that's why and I can't be in the room, so I'm going to create my own room, create my own path. So I did that.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the change of publishers. We were talking about this earlier, but so then the second and third books that you did were both originally with Dog Ear Publishing. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what happened with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's the pros and cons about all of these self-publishing companies, right? So Author House turned out to be a good one. Dog Ear Publishing, and I said their name, turned out to be a bad one. They turn out to be they got lawsuits all over the place. They took people's money and they published books, and then they disappeared and they took people's money, and my money got taken. So I have to recreate weapons. That's why I don't have a copy with me here. I ran out. I sold them all, and now the company is no longer here for me to order more books. So I have to recreate the book under a different company. Same thing happened with Create Your Own Path. I used Dog Ear Publishing, and I had a soft cover book, which you have there. And so I ended up I touched up the art, made it a hardcover now. It's now a hardcover. I went back in, made the art a little bit better, and now I used Ingram Sparks, and they're really good. And they work hand in hand with Amazon, so they're a really good company. So I had to redo Create Your Own Path, and I'm gonna eventually have to do weapons over it, so I could then move on to do the third book.
Okay, so if when people go to order your books, then on Amazon, for example, would that be the best place to order them?
Yeah, you can either order it on Amazon or Barnes and Nobles, any of the online bookstores, or you can order it straight from me. You get a signed copy. You order from me, which is darktruth22.com. My name of my company is Dark Truth Imaginations. So darktruth22.com, and as long as I have copies, I will give you a signed copy. You order straight from me, but you can go to Amazon or any online bookstore.
Okay. And so in the process of redoing these books, also you're well, not redoing them, but I guess just doing new editions, you're also making some changes to them also, right?
Yeah, slight changes, not changing much, but just like little things here and there that slipped through the cracks when I first published it. I was like, ooh, let me fix that.
Okay. So in 2017, you published your first children's book, Create Your Own Path. What was the inspiration for this book?
Well, I always wanted to do a children's story. I wanted to do a story that speaks to the artist in all of us. I truly believe that everyone is an artist, but it's not necessarily just for artists. So basically, the concept of the book is it's a child. His name is Amir. He's loosely based on my younger son, Tal Bennett. Amir is he's a kid that he's in the book. He's looking at all the people in his life, his family, friends, and he's seeing all the things that they're able to do that he can't. He's focusing all his energy on the things that he cannot do. And all of us have things that we can't do, and we start to envy other people. But then his mother, who's loosely based on my wife, she tells him, well, why don't you just think about the thing, what can you do? Don't worry about what they can do. What can you do? And he starts thinking, yeah, I can do this, and this. And it's kind of semi-autobiographical because all the things that he can do are the things that I enjoy doing as well. Art, writing, playing the guitar, all those things. And he starts to focus on just creating his own path in his world. And that this message is not just for children and it's not just for artists. So, and there's another part in here where he realized he can't do math. He's not really not well, he's not good at math. So he when it comes to the part of him saying, well, I won't focus on the things that I can do. I'll focus on what I can do. With the math part, I found that I couldn't just do that with math because, they just say, well, I can't do math, so forget it. So I made sure that I focused on, he found a way to learn math through his friend who tutored him, his friend. And so there's ways to create your own path without having to just give up on the things you can't do. So it's master and harness what you can do, and also find a way to create what you can't do.
Okay, yeah. Well, unlike the Sunjata books, the book uses illustrations to aid in the storytelling. Do you find the balance of text and drawings to be a more comfortable fit, considering your background in art?
Yes, yes, I do. And Sunjata actually does have art in it. It's not is onesies and twosies here and there. So I do have a few drawings in here in the actual novel as well. So,
Okay. Yeah.
so yeah, so I'm always doing visual art will always be a part of my work. But yes, I like I'm a visual person, so I like to see art as well as tell it and speak it.
Well, I guess the difference here would be that in many cases you need the illustrations to understand the whole story. So whereas maybe not as much in the Sunjata books.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's. I think children, they get stimulated by bright colors and cartoons and whatever. So you want them to read, but you also want them to be interested in what they're reading, and seeing the visuals of the words come to life is, I think, is good for them. They like to, it pulls on their imagination, allows them to see visually what it is that you're trying to say.
Would you say? I know you said that this was Amer is based on your son, but would you say that Amer has similar frustrations to what you experienced as a boy?
Yeah.
Can the book be somewhat autobiographical?
Yes, it is. It's pretty much the design of him is my son, but his frustrations is definitely everything in that book is me, pretty much. And Math and I are not friends. Uh, you know,
Same here. Yeah.
yeah. So that it is autobiographical.
The book seems to the book really concludes with Amer, I guess, discovering that he can think outside the box.
Yes.
So I have to ask, when did you decide, to think outside the box, and how did you do that?
I think I was always thinking outside the box. For me, I just never liked the status quo. I never liked to just go with what everyone's doing. I never really was into the things that the majority of people were into. I mean, I had my circle of friends that were into the same things that I were into, and that's who I gravitated towards. But all the things that I, as an African American male growing up in Brooklyn, was expected to do, and people assume you did, I didn't really do. And this is not a knock on anybody who does those things, like for example, basketball and all that stuff. That's a stereotype, and it's not a bad or a good one. It just is what it is. I just wasn't into the things that everyone was expecting me to be into. As a teenager, I didn't get into the drug things and smoking and all that stuff and drinking. I just didn't find that interesting for me. And I had my circle of friends who agreed with me.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I remember when I was in middle school, which, would have been, I guess, the early 90s. I remember being like really into horror movies, and particularly like zombie films. Like Dawn of the Dead was one of my favorite movies. And I remember going into school, and the kids there just had no idea. Like they just thought, people who like that kind of stuff they were weirdos.
Right.
So I felt kind of like an outsider in terms of the things that I liked. But
Right.
then, of course, much later, zombies, I mean, The Walking Dead, the whole thing became mainstream.
Yes. Yeah. Now,
it's like,
and you were like, you want to go back to all those people that said stuff to you, like, oh, so really? It's like even with the facial hair thing. I remember when I was a teenager and getting my first jobs. I had the locks, and I had when I was a teenager, in my early 20s, I had locks and I had facial hair, and everybody was saying, you had to be clean cut all that off and all that. And now beards are the thing. Like everybody is like, everybody has a beard now. So it's like, yeah.
Okay. I'd like to open the floor now to some questions. Questions for Mark. If you want to, I'll go through the chat here and see if there's anything that we missed. If you want to write them in a chat or unmute yourself and ask Mark a question. Oh, we've still got people coming in here.
Yeah.
So
I said, was watching Return of the Dragon.
Yeah, I saw that. So it's actually now known as Way of the Dragon, the Bruce Lee film.
Yes.
So this was Bruce Lee's third film. It's probably most famous for being the one where he fights Chuck Norris in the Roman Coliseum.
No. Yeah, my brother is, I have an older brother who was into all those movies, and I was subjected to them. And the other day it was so funny. One of them was on television, the one with John Saxon. And then I had to look him up, and it said he only did that one movie.
Yeah, that's Into the Dragon, yes.
Yeah.
Enter the Dragon. There was so many. Revenge of the Dragon, Return of the Dragon.
Yeah. And the movies were introduced to us in America out of order. So that's why they call it Return of the Dragon, because when they brought it to America, it was, even though he shot it the Chuck Norris one first. They tried to make a story out of it, like a sequel. It wasn't really connected. It was weird. Yeah.
No, I appreciate everything you're saying, Mark. And I was an English major in college, and I'm interested in writing. So I'm listening to everything that you're saying. And I'm actually a part of a writing group in City Island. We actually met today. So I'm appreciating your tips on books, your experiences publishing, and hopefully one day. And thank you for your service.
Oh, no, thank you for your support.
An NCO, that's huge. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
How long were you in the military, Mark?
How long?
How long have you been in?
20 years. I joined in 2001, and I just retired in March. Just moved.
Wow.
Yeah, just retired this March. So 20 years. I was in advanced individual training. I had orders to go. This is when you finish basic training, and then you go to advanced individual training where you learn your job. Basic is when you learn how to be a soldier, and then in AIT, advanced individual training, where you learn your job. So I was in, and then after that, you go to your first duty station. Like you're no longer a trainee. So I was in AIT in September of 2001, and I had orders to go to Germany, and 9/11 happened.
Oh, wow.
And,
Yeah.
So I was about to graduate from AIT a week before 9/11 happened, and then a week after 9/11 happened, I was supposed to retire.
My nephew's an Army, or was an Army medic. He didn't re-enlist. I don't know what he's gonna do now, but I'll be honest with you. I'm mostly a Marine person. But I've had a lot of boyfriends who were in the Marines, so I kind of know the acronyms a little bit. You know, they're pretty interchangeable. But you know, I love the Army too. I love, you know, anybody who serves our country is pretty amazing in my eyes. I lack that kind of discipline, so I like meeting people who have it.
Thank you.
And bravery.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mark, do you think you'll end up writing a book about the Army, about your experiences?
Yes. I'm actually going to write a semi-autobiographical book. It's going to be the name's going to be changed, but it's going to be my life story. So of course that part is in. That's the whole chapter, more than one chapter. It's going to be like a few chapters on my experience.
Mark, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I used to work at Fordham University, and I was very involved with the students who were former military and stuff, and they had a writing group at that time. I actually bought one of their books. If I find it, I'll give it to you. And they used to meet like once a month and share their writings. I'll try to find out who was involved with that. It's been about 5 years, so I don't know.
I'm in Fordham now. That's the school I go to. I'm in Fordham.
Okay, well, there's someone there. I don't know if they're still doing it with everything that happened, but there's a bunch of writers with military background that publish there. So
yeah, link up with me after this. That'd be great.
Okay. Well, I have to look for the info first.
All right.
It's in a crate somewhere.
Any comments or questions for Mark? Well, you know, since the subject of Bruce Lee came up, was Bruce Lee an inspiration? Was he a hero of yours when you were growing up?
That's the question of all questions. I love Bruce Lee. I that's the one person that I would love to sit down and meet and talk if he was still alive. Like, yeah, Bruce Lee is a big inspiration. I grew up on kung fu movies, watching the old Shaw Brother movies, but Bruce Lee is one of my favorite people. So yes, so that's why but when we were growing up, when everyone was into superheroes, I was into superheroes too. But before ninjas and kung fu was popular as it is now, my friends and I, we would do comics, draw comics of martial arts comics. When everyone was doing superhero stuff, we were drawing martial arts stuff way before it was popular. So yes, Bruce Lee was huge. And that new movie coming out, that new Shang-Chi, the movie that's coming out.
Yeah.
The original character in the comics, he came out in the 70s and he was based off of Bruce Lee. You see his old comics, you can tell it's Bruce. Supposed to be Bruce.
Yeah.
So Mark, what advice do you have for science fiction writers?
Well, you know, the term science fiction, it says it all. So if you're gonna do science fiction, I would definitely make sure that even though it's fiction, make sure the science part makes
Yes.
make it more believable.
Yes.
Wally's asking, well, one thing, do you have another comic coming? And he's also asking, would you or have you looked into making Sunjata an audiobook or a cartoon?
Yes, yes, and yes. All of those are in the works. Once I finish the saga, I want to do an animated series of it. I have enough to make it into a series. I'm a fan of Avatar, The Last Airbender, and that whole series. So I wanted to kind of have that feel to it. And an audiobook, that is something that I would like to do. This the time to do it. And I don't want to out my voice, so I would like to get someone to, because some of the book is written in first person, so Sanjata is speaking, so I don't want this. I don't want Sanjata's voice to sound like this, So yes, but yes.
Yeah, Sally wrote, very creative writer and truly appreciate your many talents.
Oh, thank you, Sally.
Wally asks, do you have another superhero in the works?
Oh, this book has so many characters. Sanjata has siblings. They're called the Lock Source, and I'm working on a spin-off of that. Then there's Lynx. If you read the book, there's another character named Lynx. So there's a bunch of spin-offs. There's a bunch of characters in here. And there's as you mentioned earlier with the glossary, there's also a cast of characters. So there are a bunch of spin-offs that I would like to do. So yes, there's a whole world of this. Is a whole world of characters that I can do. There's police officers the two female police officers, Trini and Michelle. I would like to do their story one day. So yes.
T asks, have you done any extra research for your characters?
Yeah, it depends what you mean by research. I mean, it depends on who we're talking about. So yes, it varies depending on which character we're talking about. Sanjata is loosely based on a fictionalized version of what I would like to be, but he's also based on, but his father, Sanjata's father, Ujad, is based on my martial arts teacher that I had years ago. She doesn't know this, but there is a woman named Queen Afua. She's an author and she's a public speaker and she's an amazing woman. And look her up. She's an amazing woman. So Queen Karma, who is Sanjata's mother, was loosely based on her, and she doesn't know that. So if she ever sees this, Queen Afua, Queen Karma was based on you. You ever see this? Yes. So yes. So it depends on different characters, different aspects of people. Are based on research. Yes.
I wanted to ask. Well, first of all, I want to tell the attendees, and I mentioned this earlier, that if you're looking for Mark's books, he writes as M.W. Bennett. So I wanted to know why you chose to write as M.W. Bennett.
Because I have multiple names. So when I was studying martial arts, I was gifted with the name Mahes, right? And Mahes means it's a Medu Neter, which is an Egyptian Kemetic language, and which is from Egypt or Kemet, and that name was gifted to me, and it stands for it means the heart of a lion. And because of my, it's a fly in here, because of my but it's a long story of why that name was gifted to me, but it was gifted to me. So a lot of people know me as Mahes. So I figured some people know me as Mark. So I was like, well, M.W. Bennett, it still works.
Yeah, I see. Okay. I wanted to also ask if there are any writers in particular that you love that you would recommend to our Zoom attendees.
Number one author, Octavia Butler. She's if you're familiar with her, she's an African American woman. She has written Kindred. She's done the Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents. She's written a whole saga. She also has stories that's connected. So I really love her books. William Gibson who
Oh yeah. Mhm.
yeah, he invented there's terms that we use in our everyday life today that he invented in his I guess he's the father of cyberpunk, right? So
Yeah.
Matrix is, loosely is inspired by some of his stuff, and Blade Runner and a lot of stuff are inspired by his work. Yeah, it's quite a few authors, but those are the two that come to mind immediately. Walter Mosley, like
Oh yeah. The Easy Rollins mysteries.
Rollins,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I can think of off the top. But those are definitely Octavia Butler. If you've never read any of her books, please read that. And I'm surprised that no one has not uh, created movies based on her books yet. She has a whole multiple worlds that she's created that all of them could be movies.
Yeah, I was disappointed that they didn't do any more after Devil in a Blue Dress. They didn't do any more Easy Rollins movies.
Yeah, I'm
But
shocked too. I guess they couldn't get. I guess if they can't get Denzel to come back, they probably was like, that was my introduction to Don Cheadle. He played
Yeah.
Mouse. Yeah, I hadn't heard of him prior to that. I was like, yo, who is this guy? He captured Mouse. When I saw that, I was like, yo, whoever this guy is, this is exactly how I envisioned Mouse. So that was a good.
Yeah, he that character is interesting because it seems to be like a heightened version of the kind of person that's in everyone's lives. It's like the one friend that is just bad news.
Yes.
And Mouse is like the most extreme murderous example of that.
Yes.
And it's like it's a character that is disturbing because of that.
Right. And it's a guy who's disturbing and he's like a loose cannon, but at the same time you're thinking you need this guy in your life though at the same time. It's like it's good to have him on your side.
Yeah, I mean he's able to help Easy in certain ways, but then he always takes it a step too far. Yeah.
More trouble to him, yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions before we wrap up? Okay. All right. Well, this has been great, Mark, and thank you so much for doing a great job. Oh, Wally wrote something here. I love how you're able to put it into writing. The Army has run a number on my head. Most 88 here. So,
MOS is military operational specialty.
Oh, okay. All right. So I bookmarked your website. Look forward to your future projects. Who is your favorite artist? What is your favorite comic? Her works are awesome. Octavia, wow, Mark, wow. I'm speechless. Great session.
Oh, thank you, Wally. So who is my favorite artist? Wow, that's a loaded question. I have so many. Alex Ross, two Rosses. Alex Ross, you're familiar with him? Bob Ross, John Byrne. Growing up, there's so many right now. It's slipping my. Who else? I have personal friends who are really great artists. I mean, wow, I can't think of them right now, but there's so many. Jim Lee. Oh my goodness, a lot of comic book artists. So there's a lot. That's a whole nother conversation. And who favorite artist and favorite comic? Favorite comic growing up was, like I said, Justice League was the first, but X-Men. I love X-Men, especially in the 80s and 90s when they were touching on topics that was loosely based on the civil rights movement. So I don't, so X-Men was Batman, Spider-Man. That's it. Yeah, there's a lot more, but that's the ones that come to mind.
Okay, yeah, and we're getting you're getting rave reviews here. Excellent session, thanks. We need session number 2 with you. So
anytime, let me know.
Yeah. So and the art with Mark program. I'm blanking at the moment here. That's on Wednesdays usually.
Yeah, it's usually Wednesdays at 4, but but we don't have anything on the schedule right now. But
okay.
Sally's still, she's still here. So Sally, we'll talk.
More of those. Okay.
On the schedule. Yeah.
All right. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, and thanks again, Mark. And we hope you enjoyed this program. It is being recorded, and we'll have it up on YouTube. If you came in late, or if you know anybody that wants to see it, so that will be available. So thank you so much, and everybody have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, everyone. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Z from Yonkers Public Library. Thanks so much to Sally Pinto and Alexis and Barbara from Newark. Thank you to our community partners, WJCS, the City of Yonkers Office for the Aging, Westchester County Legislator Ruth Walter, Friends of Crestwood Library, and Yonkers Public Library for making this phenomenal partnership. And we thank each and every one of you for being part of our wellness community. Be well, stay well.